Hello, Sam, are you there? You can't hear me. All right, guys. Well, I think we'll just kick into it. And if other people turn up along the way, they can join in. But thanks a lot for coming along. And Dane and Gina send their apologies. They've both got other commitments, so I'll be presenting myself. But maybe just very quickly we can just go around the attendees and just say your name and where you're calling in from and who you're working for at the moment, just so we know where everyone is. So Gavin, you first.
Sure, thanks, Chris. Hi, I'm Gavin Blakey. I'm based here in Brisbane. You can see I'm out in the veranda at the moment. And I'm the chair of the board for Engineers Without Borders Australia. Been involved with them for about 6 years, spent a year as a country manager in Cambodia, Vietnam, and so just now in a voluntary capacity.
Awesome, thanks, Gavin. Sam, you next.
Hi.
Just woken up, I see.
Yeah. Audio's working now. I'm Sam Kelsey. I was another EWB volunteer with Chris, based in Port Vila as a hydrological advisor, and I'm based in South Auckland at the moment.
Oh, really?
With Tech Consulting. So all around.
Cool. Thanks, Sam. Who's next? Amanda on the list.
Kia ora. I'm just finishing up at work, but I'll turn my video on now because it's always a bit nicer to see a face.
Hi.
I am in Whakatane. I work for WSP as a Three Waters engineer and a long-time volunteer with EWB in New Zealand, previously with the research program and now looking at diversity and inclusion.
Cool.
And also planning to head to Vanuatu at some point. So.
Oh, awesome. Okay, well.
Good to hear more about your experience.
Yep. That's cool. The last one,
I think
Lynn.
That's just me. Hi, I'm Lynn. I'm in Christchurch. I work for ACOM in the transport team, and I've recently joined the EWB Pathways course that's just started up yesterday, actually. So
cool.
Really excited to learn from that course, and yeah, really grateful to be part of it.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks everyone. Welcome along. So we'll jump straight into it. I'll start sharing my screen. I've prepared a few slides. Hopefully this works out. Can everyone see the little presentation there?
Yep.
Okay, great. So that is a photo of the harbour at Port Vila. Brought to you by the letters VSA and EWBNZ, which, did a lot of work to get me to Vanuatu. I think I was one of the first kind of people under this partnership role. It was absolutely great. So I'm very grateful to those two organizations and still kind of being involved with them now. So my background, I studied engineering at Auckland University, civil and environmental, and then kind of specified more around the water and environmental hydrology side of things. Then the work that was available for that kind of degree after university was around kind of urban water management, stormwater. So a small consultancy in Auckland called Morpham Environmental. I worked for them for quite a long time, doing environmental investigations, small amount of water supply. Kind of got a brief touching on some modeling and water safety planning and wastewater, but it was primarily stormwater. Vanuatu was very much my kind of first go at purely water supply, and definitely in a developing context, which is completely a different context altogether. And aside from that, I'm pretty into music and do a little bit of DJing on small powered community radio, and had also lived in a few other countries previously. In Canada during university, I did an exchange for 6 months, and Australia and Germany, which are both very interesting places. A little bit of time in Brisbane and North Queensland, picking what was I picking? I think eggplants up in Bundaberg. That was good fun. All right, and that was kind of my motto. EWB asked us earlier last year, why do you volunteer? And it was kind of a campaign they did to hold up a photo and take it. And I think that idea of seeing another side, not only of obviously physically and geographically, but another side of life, and how we very much live in a bubble, and there's so many other people and different ways of life out there that we're never exposed to. So that was definitely something that came to my mind during my time in Vanuatu. So my assignment was 2 years in Luganville, which is the second largest town in Vanuatu, on the largest island by landmass, Santo Island. It's the main town. And it has an interesting history. It was kind of set up around World War II, mainly as a base for American troops, and then kind of all the infrastructure, roads and water and everything is kind of legacy from World War II American base, which is kind of an interesting dynamic. And I guess the stated outcomes of that assignment were more around the capacity building of government staff and their ability to roll out the drinking water safety and security plans, which we refer to as the DWSSPs, which kind of slot into the national implementation plan for safe drinking water, which has kind of a capital assistance aspect through it, which is kind of through various DFAT and MFAT water partnerships. That team there is kind of a mixture of the rural team and the urban Luganville team. So naturally, because I was in the main Luganville office, I kind of also ended up supporting the urban team, as well as the WASH cluster and the other NGOs that were operating in Luganville and around Vanuatu. And if anyone has any questions, or if they can't hear me or something's not wrong, just butt in at any moment. Otherwise, I'll just keep talking. Cool. So here, just to give you a bit of a flavor of some of the work that we were doing. True to form, Vanuatu, the week that I arrived, basically was having a mass evacuation of the island of Ambai because of volcanic eruption causing a lot of ash, which was blanketing people's dwellings and gardens. So that was about 11,000 people, which had to be evacuated from the island of Ambai, which is just off to the east coast of Santo. So a lot of them actually chose to relocate to Santo Island on their own backs. The government was supporting them to go another place, but most of them chose not to because of family reasons, really. So that was kind of a baptism of fire, getting thrown straight into that, which, kind of throughout the normal work plan as is usual there as well. Although the drinking water safety plan kind of can still tie into emergency situations. But that was kind of the first 9 months to a year, really, was kind of going through doing assessments, and then also leading on to recovery and construction of what the next point is, some solar water pumping systems around Luganville, where the municipal system didn't reach. So we managed to drill some boreholes and construct some solar water pumping systems. Then moving on, kind of more aligned with the outcomes that were in my assignment description originally were the contractor monitoring of DWSSPs. So going around and not always performing the DWSSPs myself, but sitting in on the contractors and kind of giving them feedback and providing input. It was quite a cool way of doing it, really. It wasn't maybe how we'd think about contractor monitoring, where you're trying to ping them for everything you can, it was more definitely kind of participatory and just being part of the group and adding in input where possible. And then again, around finding new sources. A lot of the times people will come to the office and say, look, we've got a water source that we want you to come and have a look at. Can you come and check it out? That's kind of part of our main function in the office in Luganville. Bit of borehole drilling. This tank you can see was constructed as part of the annual training for Department of Water staff, where they got a lot of different staff from all over Vanuatu to come and spend, I think, about a week or 10 days working on this tank. And we also built some rainwater harvesting structures with the idea that we would train people and then they would go back to their own islands and could then take the lead on other construction projects to build similar things back in their home province. Few more. This was kind of the follow-up construction there. This was on the island of Tangawa, where we installed all that nice guttering there behind and some first flush downpipes. So yeah, the government of Vanuatu was also at the stage where they were contracting out construction of new water supplies, because they realized that they really don't have the capacity, the number of staff or people on the ground to do all this work themselves, which they have previously done in the past, because there's a lot of forward workload of trying to find new places. And then if you take a month out or 2 months out to go and build something, then you're kind of not able to progress their other work plans. So they're doing, most of the larger projects are now being contracted out with government staff then going in and checking in at certain times, a bit more similar to how we would do things back here. So the last thing that I was working on before getting pulled up for COVID was World Water Day 2020, which was on March 22nd. So that was probably the most organized we'd ever been for a World Water Day and spent a lot of time going into it when it was gonna be a big day. Just before we got told we had to leave, and then World Water Day was eventually cancelled as well because of the COVID pandemic. So that was a bit of a shame, but obviously understandably. And then I guess, and you'll see in some other photos, COVID itself was probably the biggest wash promotion in the Pacific that could ever have happened, because overnight there's hand washing facilities in every shop. So that was kind of an interesting dynamic. Yes, and also some training of trainers for other people to go out and run DWSSPs. And we also got to design and also construct some of our own gravity fed systems as well, which is a bit more of that kind of core volunteering engineering kind of stuff. So this is a nice photo of my main counterpart Ezekiel. He'd probably cringe if he knew I was showing this to you now, but I know he won't mind that much. So this is the main person that I was working with day to day. He's the Community Water Development Officer. Here he is kind of jiggling the compartment bag test for an E. coli test. But as I say, they're pretty under-resourced. He's the only community development officer for the whole of Samoa, which is a pretty big island and pretty hard to get around most of the time. So the pressure's quite a lot on him to be able to manage all the requests and get around to check all these different islands. I think they'll be looking to grow that in the future. And then the other person that I was working with very closely and still kind of am in an e-volunteering role was Christina Taleo, which I saw, which was a photo of her in the previous slide next to the tank. And her role is the supervisor. So she kind of looks out for the Samoa province of the urban and the rural stuff. Here we are again, going out on another field trip. So I was pretty lucky, I think, in terms of relative to other volunteer service abroad assignments, where we get to travel a lot of places that most other volunteers don't get to go, a lot around Santo and then the Banks Islands group to the north. And yes, being a white man or white fella, you stick out like a sore thumb. The little kids will either run to you and hug you, or they'll run away crying because they're not too familiar with. Yeah, so that was always felt kind of like a celebrity, because people were always like looking at you and seeing if you're looking at them. It was quite interesting, really. But yeah, very humbling as well. People were very kind and generous all the time, so always felt very welcome. So yeah, I guess cutting to a few tips from my time. I think, yeah, it's the first 3 months, it was quite draining. It takes a long time. Well, the slum is not extremely hard to start with, but it's kind of the intensity of the people around you and how much they're laughing and talking, and you never really know quite where you're going, or you're just following people around. So I think in that sense, it's very much the first wee while is just to try and adjust, take your time and take it slowly and build those relationships with people before you really start to try and do too much work and get overwhelmed with not being able to do things. I think because, yeah, until you kind of understand the context and can zoom out a little bit from your own situation, it's hard to know what the real situation is. I think, yeah, obviously if you put yourself in these assignments, you're always really wanting to achieve the best and have your own great ideas of what you can achieve. But then sometimes you often reach a point where you just know that it's either outside of what is possible for you to do, or if it's not something that you can convince your counterparts to do on their own, then it's not really up to you to like rush out there and be the hero and try and do it. So I think, yeah, often get to that point where it's, you know, your counterpart's decision, and then if they do or don't want to do it, then you kind of leave it with them. I think, yeah, also coming from our professional backgrounds, we like to spend a lot of time writing reports and getting into those details quite heavily, which I found quite liberating over there, because you could, you know, maybe obviously document something and take a record of it, but you don't need to go to the kind of rigmarole and detail of what reporting we expect back in home, especially if you're unsure that someone will ever actually pick it up and read it again. So yeah, I kind of like went through and set up my own kind of template, which was very, you know, just summary heavy at the front of the very basic information, just so that if anyone did pick it up and have a read, they could get all the kind of key details at the front, without having to go too heavy through the text. But then if you're passing it on to kind of external or other NGOs or, you know, other consultants, then obviously they can go back and get a bit more detail if they want to. And one of the things that I found really useful that Google, of all people, has sorted out is just being able to kind of geotag photos in your phone. I think most kind of smartphones have that these days, where I guess, you know, people are afraid of privacy issues, but I find it very useful where you can just take a photo. I kind of have it synced to Wi-Fi. We did have Wi-Fi over there, which, you know, relative to here is not actually that expensive. It's not always very reliable, but it was enough to kind of, then when you come home, it kind of automatically uploads them to the Google Photos. Then there's the other application, Google My Maps, which is kind of like a more of a developer's version of Google Maps, where you can kind of just load them in. And can you see the change screen now? So yeah, this is basically just, you know, one site where you can just go import your photos. They pop up on a map, and then you can kind of see. So they're not always super accurate, but for me, I've always had pretty good experience. So rather than having to like take a GPS and download every time, which ideally like your counterpart would still be doing that anyway, that was a tool that I used a lot for being able to come back and do designs and stuff back. Oh,
Hey Chris, on that map, it's got on the sort of top leftish, there's lots of trees that have fallen down, but all fall in the same direction. Is that a cyclone or a hurricane or something?
Well, yeah, that's interesting you mentioned that. I just pulled this up before, and this was, you can still hear me? It just said I got signed up. So you see this imagery is from 2020. So this is post Cyclone Harold. They've actually gone back and updated with all of the aerial photography after Cyclone Harold, which came through just after we got pulled out of Santo, which rolled through a Category 5 cyclone on April the 6th, which, yeah, like flattened Lincolnville basically. But I was also amazed that I heard that a lot of our panels survived, and I think you can kind of see this is the panels still there. They didn't get blown away even after all those trees fell down and got blown away, which I was pretty amazed about, to be honest, because I was in Port Vila after the cyclone and I thought they are definitely going to be gone, and we should have had more preparedness around warning people to like unclip them and unscrew them and then put them away, because you know that wouldn't be too hard. But thankfully I think they survived, which I was very surprised. So we'll go back to this. Moving on, I don't think I have too many more. So yeah, that was my next slide. So the first one, COVID. Vanuatu relies about 50 to 60% on tourism, which is basically turned off overnight from the COVID disaster. And not just that, all the technical advisors and volunteers that were supporting government staff basically got pulled out. So they're very much on their own now. I think, well, Michelle, who was our counterpart, she managed to stay on with UNICEF in a last minute kind of contract with them, which I think she'll be invaluable to the Department of Water now as well. But that's an example of all the hand washing stations which popped up around town outside every store. That was a requirement that I was taking it to the level where I was like worried about the soap then going into the stormwater and into the coastal, but I didn't dare to bring that up with anyone. And then this next photo is, yeah, like you're saying, was the devastation from Cyclone Harold. It's kind of a before and after of one of our friends' resorts down at Coral Keys, which is a popular dive resort. Who, yeah, they you know, kind of lost all their business overnight from COVID and then got smashed by the cyclone as well. So I'm still talking to one of my friends who works there, and they're doing pretty tough, to say the least, but we'll see if they can maintain. And not just, yeah, the resort owners, obviously, that got smashed. Here's just some more photos for a casual talk too. So as I mentioned, I really enjoyed my time, and here's an example of, on the left-hand side, of how, you know, close you have to get to your workmates. This was my workmate falling asleep on my shoulder as we were driving through some very rough bush. I don't know how he managed to sleep, to be honest, because it was pretty up and down, but I guess he was used to it and just had a nap on my shoulder for half an hour while we made our way to the boat. And this is another highlight, was where was kind of working with another Department of Water staff, co-facilitating a training of trainers for the DWSPs. So then all these people go out and either bid for the contracts or work with other NGOs that win the contracts to run the DWSP programs. And there's some other nice happy shots. Lots of time for adventures and beautiful places as well. With VSA, we had a really strong crew of volunteers who are very supportive of each other and quite social as well. it wasn't as much island time as I thought, of just kind of, you know, waiting for things to happen and not knowing anyone. We had quite a strong social group, and work was really busy as well. So that was great. And yeah, the kids are definitely a highlight. They're just a lot of fun, and especially when you start talking to them in Bislama, they just like kind of freak out at first, but then become your best friend instantly. So that was great. I think one of the main improvements that I came to my head was kind of the induction around VSA and EWB. And I think because it was a new role, I think people have probably discussed what the responsibilities between the two organizations should be. But I think, yeah, probably for the next ones, just need like a bit of a stronger induction, especially around the health and safety side of things, and who is particularly responsible when, and what the requirements are when like moving or working away from your normal place of residence, because that's not something that a lot of other volunteers do. So VSA was not, you know, that was kind of lost a little bit in the translation, but I think, you know, it's easy to fix for the next rounds, whenever that may be. I think I have the last slide there. Yes, so opening the floor, that was our final departing photo before coming home. Sadly, some of those volunteers had only been there for maybe like 1 or 2 months, so I count myself very lucky that I almost saw out my whole assignment before getting pulled out. And those are just an example of some of the amazing pineapples you can get for about $2 in the right season. So thanks for listening, and yeah, any questions, let me know.
Cheers, Chris.
Cheers.
Thanks, Chris.
How is Vanuatu doing after the cyclone now?
It's a good question. So I think the main response, yeah, has been very different to Cyclone Pam, which was 5 years ago, and I think the criticism there was just a huge influx of foreign aid, a lot of it kind of unsolicited, and people just rushing around not knowing who was doing what, and it was all a bit of pandemonium, I think. So now obviously with people either not being allowed to go there, or because different countries have their own crisis to deal with, the appetite for giving aid is pretty limited. So I think in that sense, it's been pretty slow. People are isolated, but I think there are also other people that were already there on the ground, kind of some more like ground level roots aid arrangements that have been set up by either expats or locals that are giving quite a lot of aid. And New Zealand and Australia had, you know, gradually kind of got in there and being distributed. I think there were 2 deaths, and from what I've heard, there's still around Luganville some patchiness in the water supply. I think electricity now has been restored to most places. And yeah, I think, you know, it's probably more of a long-term thing which will eventuate, and it's kind of just like the pulling back of progress, like everything that they were kind of working for the last 5 years, you now have to go back 5 years and kind of start again. So I think people generally stay happy and find ways to make do. But yeah, like for example, my workmate, he'd probably spent the last, you know, 4 or 5 years building up quite a modest little tin house, and that was like kind of completely gone. So, you know, he'll still turn up to work. He's probably got other places he can go and sleep as well. But yeah, it's just challenging on an individual level and a wider level.
Thanks very much for the presentation, Chris. Really enjoyed it. Just thinking about a couple of questions. One would be, what were you most proud of in your time there? And the second double bung question would be, if you did it again, what would you do more of and what would you do less of?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one moment that kind of was not really a huge like achievement, but just becoming more comfortable with the place and feeling like I fit in, and like those moments of like finding it challenging around the language and always feeling like you're kind of being led around, and then just having like these gradual moments of being like, I get it now. Like, I understand what they're saying, and I kind of feel like I can give back and like, you know, and get involved in the banter, and yeah, it felt like it was definitely becoming a home. And so I think that was also quite an interesting aspect of when it was like, wow, no, we say you're going now, and so then you're like, hang on, like, can you do that? Oh yeah, you can. I'm not actually from here. So yeah, that was quite interesting. And I think like, if I was to stay longer, I would try and break out of, although I said it's social, enjoyable being in the volunteer bubble. We kind of lived in a group of 7 houses in a kind of a compound. We still interacted with our communities a bit, but I think if you really wanted to get a bit more of a deep insight into what the community was, then, you know, you'd live maybe a bit more by yourself in like a village. That probably has its own security things from a VSA perspective as well. But yeah, I think if I stay, not that I'd do it different from this time, but if I was going to stay longer to kind of get a bit more of a deeper cultural understanding, just try and get a bit more integrated in the society. Yeah. Alright. Any other questions?
So just around the whole capacity building thing, so it's the modern day approach a lot of organizations are taking to development work.
Yep.
So how effective do you think it is, and how easy or difficult is it to make sure what you're doing is building capacity?
Yeah. Very good question. Yeah, I think it's very difficult to probably achieve it to the level which maybe some people say or hope they want to, because I think from my experience, the people that we're working with, their baseline of, for example, like computer literacy is so low that to try and get them to a point where you could get like writing a regular report or doing that kind of stuff, you know, it's just not possible with the time that you have in 2 years. I think in that sense though, the supervisor that came along, Christina, was quite a saving grace for my assignment, because she was at a level where you know, we could work together on more like that reporting level stuff, and kind of she's like leading that forward now. So yeah, I think you got to pick your targets, and then also, I guess, yeah, choose. But then in saying that, more on the practical side of things, I definitely had some moments as well where we were building, for example, like a concrete base, and I showed them how you could like cut and jam in the reinforcing wire to kind of make a structure that would hold itself by itself. And then my workmate was like, wow, I've like never seen anyone do that before. That's actually how you meant to do it. And he just kept talking about it the whole night, like even when we were drinking kava. So I think, yeah, you have those small unexpected moments, which, yeah, you realize that's kind of what you came to do. And so I think, yeah, it's just about finding how to do those yourself.
Yeah.
Chris, have you been giving any remote support since you've been back?
Yes, I have been doing some. At first around a bit of the kind of Cyclone Harold stuff, and now, yeah, I've been getting sent some kind of GPS design work that I can do remotely. So I think I will be kind of continuing on that an volunteering arrangement for the next wee while. Yeah, which I think will be kind of interesting, because that as a capacity building thing is going to be even harder, because you're obviously not seeing the person regularly. So I think, but I kind of feel like they deserve a little bit of help because I've been like put through the ringer as well. But then I think like trying to lead by just example, or like this is how I do it, making sure that people see it and giving you feedback on it, and not just like kind of churning out work, will be my approach around that. Yeah. And you were saying you're thinking about going or trying to go as well to Vanuatu. Oh, I think you're muted, maybe? No.
I'm not muted, but it keeps disconnecting
Okay.
mic, so it might drop out again. But
Okay.
to be heading to Malumpa at the end of this year.
Okay, cool.
It's all a bit up in the air at the moment,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I don't know when, and I don't know if it'll still be Malumpa. There might be somewhere else.
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, if there's any questions or anything, just get in touch, and I can even, like, while I'm doing this e-volunteering stuff, just show you some of the kind of stuff that I've been doing as well, because that might, we probably planned to have like a handover with whoever was meant to be going to Sanmar as well, but obviously that's not possible yet, but I mean, it might still be at some stage, yeah. Cool. Any more questions?
What's next for you, Chris?
What's next? Well, good question. I mean, I've got my guitar here. I was trying to play some before, so I've been playing a bit of that. Yeah, doing a bit of the e-volunteering. I've kind of been putting my feelers out a bit for jobs, but nothing's come up too much. And I was thinking I kind of want to focus on doing more water supply stuff rather than just any environmental work, because I think I would like to continue doing this work in the future when we can kind of travel and stuff again. So if I had something that was more directly water supply related as like recent experience, it will make it easier to continue doing this kind of stuff. So at this stage, just kind of biding the time. Yep.
What do you miss about Vanuatu now that you're back?
Well, yeah, it's kind of weird now just driving around in cars and just seeing how many cars there are and just going, this is very strange. Like, I mean, not saying that there's not like cars in Vanuatu, like Port Vila was very busy as well, lots of traffic and buses, but even then it's kind of got a bit more of a community vibe to it. So, I might just pick that up soon. Someone else get it. The fruit and veggies, cheap fruit and veggies were amazing, and yeah, I think yeah, just the warm smiles. People always kind of making eye contact with you, and if you're like on the other side of the street and you catch someone's eye, you give them a wave and they'll just like wave back at you like instantly. Like, you definitely don't get that much in Auckland. So yeah, that's what a few of the main things. Although I'm still trying and people just look at me funny, but
Ka pai for trying though.
Oh, kia ora, thank you. Yeah. Cool.
Something that we've done here in Australia that I don't know whether you've done it there as well, is for field professionals like yourself to be able to count some of that experience towards their chartered engineering. So in Australia, the Engineers Australia have the chartered process. Okay. And we've talked with them about those 16 competencies, and many of those competencies are ones you can actually gain from a volunteering assignment, whereas a lot of people have challenges trying to get some of them if you're sort of squirreled away doing technical work here in an office in Australia. And so that's just something to share anyway, is that might be something for field professionals to be able to think about while they're away. What can they use of that to help them become a chartered engineer? With I assume it's the same with Engineers New Zealand. Yeah, Engineering New Zealand. Yeah, well, I was kind of intimately working on that previously, but never got too far. But yeah, it's a good point. I might have another look and just try and document some of the stuff I've done, at least for those purposes. Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that wraps us up. Thanks everyone for listening in and the questions. And I think I've recorded this, so I mean, I guess you guys probably won't watch it again, but I'll post it somewhere. If you know anyone else that missed it and wants to watch, I'll post it, and then I can
send them the link. But yeah, thanks a lot for coming along, and keep in touch, and all the best with what you're working on at the moment.
Great work.
Thanks,
Thanks very
Chris.
much, Chris.
Thanks,
Kia ora.
Chris.
Thanks a lot.
Good luck
Bye.
for the job hunt.
Thank you. Still self-isolating. Bye.
See ya.